Now we're going to offer loving kindness to a difficult person. In accordance with the basic principle of the practice, doing it the easiest way possible, we're encouraged to not start with the most unthinkable person, the one where they've hurt us so badly personally, or in our eyes have behaved so badly on the world stage that it's just about unimaginable. Instead, we're urged to begin with somebody we have a little bit of conflict with, or we find someone annoying. It's not wrong to begin with a kind of supremely difficult person, but it tends to be exhausting. We lose balance more quickly because we haven't, in a way, done the strength training as we move toward it. All along the way, in doing loving kindness practice, we are building strength. And we're building clarity, even if we don't have a cognitive understanding of some fine distinctions. We're developing a kind of embodied understanding. Like, what's it like to have loving kindness for ourselves and for someone else at the same time? So our generosity is not the same as martyrdom. It's not like giving in. What's it like to have loving kindness for someone and realize I can't fix it? I can't make it all better for someone. The universe is not in my hands in that way. And what's it like to have loving kindness for somebody we really disagree with and whose agenda we're going to argue against and fight against, but hopefully not with hatred in our hearts, not motivated by such tremendous antipathy or bitterness, not being so lost in that realm of self and other and us and them. What's it like to discover new sources of strength? So as we continue doing the practice, we come to a very different sense about these questions and a kind of intuitive understanding of, oh yeah, that's what it feels like, say, to have loving kindness for myself and someone else. And so to sort of plunge in off the deep end with this horribly difficult person, well, you might find it kind of discouraging. But if you do, even a mildly difficult person can somehow trigger a lot of rage or distress. And if that happens, then we go back to offering loving kindness to ourselves. It's not a question of pass-fail or timetable, like we must get rid of all past grudges, by midnight or something. It's not like that. But rather continually evolving and nurturing and experimenting. If we feel overwhelmed, if we feel a lot of distress, it's always correct to go back to offer loving kindness to ourselves. Because we're the ones who are sitting here suffering. It doesn't mean you're doing remedial work or you can't do the real thing. That is the real thing. So we'll experiment. We'll see what it's like as we include somebody we find somewhat difficult in this field of loving kindness. We should also remember that loving kindness doesn't mandate a certain kind of action. It does not mean you're going to say yes or you're going to invite them for dinner or ever see them again, anything. But that from within, we approach them, we view them, wishing they could be happier, wishing they could see more clearly where their own happiness might lie, wishing they be free of hatred themselves, perhaps. And then we see what happens. This is also a category where it would be pretty common for people to get impatient and think, oh, well, I'll do this for a few minutes and I'll go off and see my difficult person and I will be completely different. They will be completely different through the force of my own mind. The dynamic will be completely different. And rather than put that kind of burden on oneself, remember, first of all, it's a process. It's like strength training. It takes a while. We probably are different. But what happens is that if we used to get overwhelmed by a certain reflexive, reactive state that we then regret, and that overwhelm used to last, say, 2 hours, over time, it's going to last maybe 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes is going to feel really terrible. So very few people jump up and down with joy and say, wow, this just lasts 2 hours. It's a big change. But it is a big change. And that's how things will happen. So we're always remembering, hopefully, to give ourselves a break, allow our process to unfold, not to make ourselves into an enemy, and that the basis of all of this is kindness and compassion to oneself. You can sit comfortably. Allow your energy to move into your body. See if there's a kind of mildly difficult person that comes to mind, someone you find rather irritating or annoying, even someone you feel kind of stressed out around or nervous around. If someone like that comes to mind, you can bring them here. Get an image of them, or say their name to yourself. Get a feeling for their presence. See what happens as you begin to offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. Remember, we're not trying to force any special feeling or resolution or fabricate anything at all, but rather see what happens as we pay attention differently. Rather than, for example, obsessing about this person's faults, how terrible they are, again and again and again. We're going to just see what happens when we wish for them to come out of their own suffering, to see things more clearly themselves, to be happier. May you be safe. Be happy. Be healthy. Live with ease. This is also a good time to remember these phrases don't mean may you be triumphant and hurting people better and faster all the time. It's not like that. We're hoping for a deeper sense of wholeness. We're offering a deeper sense of wholeness as an affirmation of our own recognition of how much is possible for a human being. And if you need to change the phrases, that's fine too. If you start to feel uneasy, like almost as though you're abandoning yourself, then you can offer loving kindness to yourself and the difficult person at the same time. The phrase becomes more like, may we be safe, be happy, and you can visualize yourselves together. If you want to get creative, you can imagine this difficult person as an infant, so vulnerable, so subject to the actions of those around them, as we all were. What happens then? You visualize them perhaps in some situation where suddenly it seems easier, you feel more released. So, for example, one person said they would imagine their difficult person on an island, no boat in sight, plenty of food. They didn't want them to starve, but they couldn't get here. They couldn't reach here. And then loving kindness suddenly seemed possible. And remember, the bottom line is the phrases. We gather our attention completely behind one phrase at a time, which in itself over time will be the basis for the emergence of the sense of connection. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes, lift your gaze, and end the session.